Well, Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling and Ricky Gervais have proved that if you stand up to the woke, eventually you win. J.K. Rowling's book sales went from $7 million to $11.9 million worth last year. This despite the fact she was attacked by trans activists because she said that women deserve their own private spaces.
Yep, you heard that right. Despite all the noise from woke culture and backlash from the left, it's safe to say J.K. Rowling just scored a massive win. Because let's be real, $1.9 billion isn't something you can just ignore. J.K. Rowling, the mastermind behind the legendary Harry Potter series, is making waves once again. But this time, it's for dismantling woke Hollywood in a spectacular fashion. The fallout, absolutely epic.
Followed by a number of deliberately misspelled versions of the word woman. Now, there was instant backlash to that. She was accused of being transphobic.
But how did the creator of the majestic Harry Potter?
Harry Potter came to me on a train in 1990. I was sitting just staring out of the window and the idea just fell out of nowhere. It was the purest stroke of inspiration I've ever had in my life. And I've been writing about him ever since.
Get into the center of a cultural war. But here's the thing. Rowling isn't just clapping back at trolls on Twitter, or X. She's taking on an entire system that's been trying to silence her. So let's hit rewind and break down how this all kicked off. First up, let's talk about Humza Yousaf. Yeah, the First Minister of Scotland, or should we say woke First Minister. This guy's behind the controversial hate crime law that's been raising eyebrows all over Scotland. Under this law, penalties get harsher if a crime is motivated by prejudice, whether that's about race, religion, sexual orientation, or transgender identity. Now, J.K. Rowling didn't hold back. She went all in, ripping into Yousaf's law, pointing out how it ignores the safety of biological women.
The beginning of the end for Humza Yousaf started when J.K. Rowling condemned Scotland's newly imposed hate crime laws, which extended to trans-identifying people but ignored biological women.
Rowling argued that these laws were sidelining women's rights to cater to a radical gender agenda. And of course, the backlash came quickly. People started labeling her as transphobic. But did the Queen back down? Absolutely not. She doubled down, calling out Yousaf's wokeness and warning that his obsession was leading Scotland down a dangerous path. In true Rowling style, she fired off tweets saying Yousaf was putting the feelings of men performing feminine ahead of the real issues women face in society. And when Yousaf's government started to crumble, she was ready with another tweet. Karma's a bitch, she wrote. Savage, right? But she didn't stop there. Rowling slammed the hate crime laws as a disaster, claiming they were designed to silence women who dared to speak up for their rights. And guess what? She was spot on. Before long, this very law was being used against women who were simply trying to protect their safety, even in their own private spaces. Now, things really took a wild turn when Rowling got caught up in a bizarre lawsuit. Let me set the scene for you. Humza Yousaf, an Algerian boxer facing major backlash over gender eligibility for the 2024 Paris Olympics, decided to hit back with a cyberbullying lawsuit.
أنا نوجه رسالتي لكامل شعوب العالم أنهم يكونوا متمسكين بالمبادئ الأولمبية حسب الميثاق الأولمبي وابتعاد عن التنمر على جميع الرياضيين لأنه هذا الشيء أثر ويأثر كثير وكثير.
And guess who she filed it against? Not just J.K. Rowling. Oh no, it gets crazier. She also went after Elon Musk and Donald Trump. Yeah, you heard that right. The lawsuit claimed these high-profile figures were fueling the online outrage against her. But let's see what the International Olympic Committee, IOC, had to say about this whole mess.
That testosterone is not a perfect test. Many women can have testosterone which is in what would be called male levels and still be women and still compete as women. So this panacea, this idea that suddenly you do one test for testosterone and that sorts everything out, not the case, I'm afraid.
As you can imagine, social media exploded into chaos. People started accusing Rowling of getting scared and deleting her tweets. But scared? Rowling? Not a chance. Sure, she went quiet for a bit, but when she came back, she didn't hold back. She tweeted,
"A young female boxer just had everything she worked for snatched away because you allowed a male to get in the ring with her. You're a disgrace. Your safeguarding is a joke. And number Paris 24 will forever be tarnished by this brutal injustice to Karini."
Instead of backing down, Rowling doubled down. Again, she stood her ground, insisting on fairness in sport and calling out the absurdity of allowing men to compete in women's categories. This lawsuit threw her back into the spotlight. It might have slowed her down for a moment, but in true Rowling fashion, she came back swinging harder than ever. The woke activists thought they had her cornered, but Rowling doesn't get cornered. She's the queen after all. And just to remind everyone she's ready to go the distance, she tweeted,
I'd happily do 2 years in jail if the alternative is compelled speech and forced denial of the reality of sex. Bring on the court case. It'll be more fun than I've ever had on a red carpet.
If you thought things were wild already, buckle up, because the Hollywood drama is about to get real. Picture this. You create one of the biggest franchises in history, launching the careers of stars like Daniel Radcliffe, Emma Watson, and Eddie Redmayne, people who literally owe their entire careers to you. And then boom, they turn on you, siding with the woke activists instead of standing with the very woman who gave them fame. Let's start with Radcliffe, who's been super vocal about transgenderism. He's on record saying, transgender women are women. He talked about his fractured relationship with Rowling and how they have not talked for years.
Daniel Radcliffe has admitted he hasn't spoken to J.K. Rowling in years and branded the fallout over their trans views as sad. The 34-year-old said,
He made it clear that he doesn't agree with Rowling's beliefs. He even went as far as apologizing for her comments.
I have heard this. This is something that has come up every so often for the last few years, and every time it comes up, I'm like, that's not true.
He further added, erasing the identity and dignity of transgender people, plus it goes against everything that professional healthcare associations. Meanwhile, Hermione, aka Emma Watson, has been just as outspoken. She's all over social media, dropping hashtags and showing her support for the trans community. She tweeted,
Trans people are who they say they are, and they deserve to live their lives without being constantly questioned or told they aren't who they say they are.
And she didn't stop there. Watson went on to say,
I want my trans followers to know that I, and so many others, see you, respect you, and love you for who you are. Happy Pride. Sending love.
And then there's Redmayne, who simply said that Rowling was wrong and that trans women are unequivocally women. He was so upset that Rowling was facing criticism for her anti-transgender tweets and her 37,000 words rambling diatribe against transgender people. Rowling's response? Absolute savage mode. She called out the Harry Potter stars for backing a movement she believes is eroding women's rights. And trust me, she made it crystal clear that she's not going to sit quietly while the actors she made famous use their platforms to advocate for agendas that undermine the very rights of women. If you thought the lawsuit and the betrayal by her actors were shocking, wait until you hear this. J.K. Rowling was almost arrested at one point. That's right, woke activists actually demanded she be arrested for misgendering a UK news anchor under hate crime laws.
J.K. Rowling to deliberately, and that is the key word, misgender me, knowing who I am, is grossly offensive. It is a hate crime.
Can you believe it? The woman who gave us the Harry Potter legacy was nearly thrown in jail for standing up for women's rights. But just like always, Rowling didn't flinch. Instead, she dared the authorities to come after her. She tweeted,
I'm currently out of the country, but if what I've written qualifies as offensive under this new act, I welcome being arrested when I return to Scotland.
Rowling made it crystal clear that she wasn't going to be intimidated by woke activists. And soon after, the Scotland police announced that no further action would be taken. Another victory for Rowling. Throughout all the attempts to silence her, from being labeled a TERF to multiple cancellation attempts, Rowling stood tall. Her fight. The effect of transgenderism on women's rights, and the controversial issue of transitioning minors. And every time they try to bring her down, she comes back fighting even harder.
Transgender community, and specifically transgender social media star Dylan Mulvaney, after they got a brand deal from Bud Light.
A beer is now promoting itself during March Madness, a male-oriented event, by hiring a man who says he is a woman dressed as Audrey Hepburn to sell you beer.
Whether you're liberal or conservative, you probably have some strong feelings about this.
Rowling was crystal clear about the dangers of letting kids make irreversible changes to their bodies at such a young age. often without their parents' consent. She backed her argument with research, showing that many children with gender dysphoria naturally grow out of it. Rowling warned that the long-term consequences of transitioning young kids could be devastating. And just like clockwork, the backlash came swiftly. Trans activists accused her of spreading hate and being completely out of touch. But did Rowling back down? Absolutely not. Things took an interesting turn when the very warnings Rowling had been shouting about started coming true. The UK's National Health Service, NHS, made a huge move. They stopped prescribing puberty blockers to children and updated their cross-sex hormones policy, stating that there wasn't enough evidence to support the safety or clinical effectiveness of these treatments.
I'm delighted at the judgment of the court today. It was a judgment that will protect vulnerable people. I wish it had been made for me before I embarked on the devastating experiment of puberty blockers. My life would be very different today.
Kira was 16 when she went to the Tavistock Centre. She started receiving hormone blockers and later surgery to become Quincy. She regretted the decision, and today, in a landmark ruling, a judge said her case had shown it's doubtful 14 and 15-year-olds could understand long-term risks of treatment, and highly unlikely children under 13 can give competent consent.
Finally, the medical community was taking notice of what Rowling had been warning about for years. And this? It was a huge win for Rowling, who had been slammed as transphobic for so long. A massive part of her argument was proven right. Although some in the media tried to downplay it, her supporters were quick to point out how vindicated she had been. This wasn't just a personal victory for Rowling, it was a pivotal moment in the conversation about protecting children's safety. And there you have it, J.K. Rowling, a woman who stood her ground. She's fought for women's rights, children's safety, and the freedom to speak her mind, and in the end, she came out on top. From lawsuits and celebrity betrayals to police investigations and a constant storm of online hate, Rowling has faced it all.
Freedom of speech and belief are at the end in Scotland if the accurate description of biological sex is deemed criminal. I'm currently out of the country, but if what I've written here qualifies as an offence under the terms of the new Act, I look forward to being arrested when I return to the birthplace of the Scottish Enlightenment.
Fearless and unapologetic, she's gone head-to-head with woke Hollywood, championed fairness in women's sports, and refused to be silenced. They've called her a transphobe, a TERF, and tried to cancel her time and again. But Rowling keeps fighting back. She's proven that she won't stop and she won't back down. So what do you think? Is J.K. Rowling the ultimate warrior against woke culture, or was the backlash justified? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more juicy content coming your way.